show dedicated to Critical Role over on the Geek and Sundry Twitch channel. Welcome to everybody joining us live, and as always, if you can't stay, we will be posting this on Monday, so don't worry. Many thanks again, and again, and again, forever, to Akuma Mika at EmmaFrost91 for our logo. This week features 3 more amazing artists. The current scene is from Philip Smith at SmithPJSmith997. Later, you'll be seeing pieces from Eilish at EA Downs, Downes, and Jilsifer Dolan at JDizzleLizzle over on Twitter. And if you'd like your art featured here, please let any of the show's hosts know via Twitter, and we'll do our best to get it on the show. Or you can let us know on our official Twitter account at Gilmore_gossip. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch us each and every week. I'm Akiva, found on Twitter at AkivaDavid, AKIVADAPHYDD. And joining me today are my excellent friends and a special guest. Let's introduce ourselves and tell us, what aspect of D&D would you like to see more of in real life?
Hi guys, I'm Kat, also known as KittenSmittenG on Twitter. I'm actually changing my Twitter handle as well, so if you guys jump over to Twitter, you can see what my new handle is and maybe throw that a follow instead. A couple of reasons for that, but that's okay, I won't go into those right now. What aspect of D&D would I like to see more in real life? Could I cast spells in real life? That would be awesome.
Hey, anything goes.
I know. That would probably be, if I could take anything out of D&D and put it into real life, that would be certainly it, casting spells. If you're talking more, like less fantasy and more quality, I mean, the teamwork that you find in D&D is always something that you would like to see. Yeah.
Indeed. Something the world is severely lacking these days.
Oh, terrible these days. My gosh.
Indeed. And our special guest.
Hi, everybody. This is Amber. I am at A Full Margin on the Twitters and on most websites. In Twitch, I am Gilmore Vax Shipper. I would have to say the one aspect in D&D I'd like to most see in real life is probably the sense of community. Kind of similar to Kat, there seems to be a greater sense of social unity in our D&D universes that you don't really see now.
Indeed, one of the big draws for D&D is that sense of community, whether it's in the game itself or with other players.
Very true. Very true.
And I have to agree, that is something that is lacking in the world at large, but I love about the critter community.
I love the critter community just for that. I mean, I've been active in fandoms across all forms of media for about 20 years, over 20 years now, and I have never seen a fandom like the critters.
Indeed. I mean, you look at the fandom for any other show, whether it's on TV or on the internet, and you're going to find, there are going to be little pockets that are good, but there's also pockets that are very vitriolic and just, ugh.
Well, then there's good, and then there's like an actual social force good. And it's a big difference.
Oh, yes. And fortunately, the Critters community is both. Much love to the Critters community.
Indeed. Big hearts.
So, before we get into the actual episode, we do have a few announcements. By now, you guys should have seen the first 2 episodes of Force Grey. And now that, if you're watching this on Monday, possibly even 3. And I just have to say, Force Grey is hilarious. Have you guys seen it?
I have been watching.
I've seen the Yeah.
Not with the same dedication of Critical Role, but I was really curious.
I've
I
seen the first
enjoy,
episode.
yeah. Well, it's only 2 episodes in, so we're kind of just getting on footing. I like that Ashley's kind of brought in as sort of a ringer. I thought that was great. She seems to have an easier time sort of herding the cats.
Indeed.
'Cause, yeah.
What were you saying, Kat?
I've seen the first one, but not the second yet. It's on my to-do list. There's so much coming out at the moment
Oh,
to watch,
indeed.
and it's difficult to keep track of it all. But definitely on my to-watch list. I enjoyed the first episode. Yeah.
So far, the story has been great, and the players are hilarious, which sort of to be expected, but is also great in its own thing. To be expected because they are comedians. And I love how they show the roles and the modifiers.
Yes. That's very nice. Very handy.
My problem...
It's very
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, it's what is it? Their other RPG by Will Wheaton.
Titan's Grave.
Right.
Titan's Grave. Yeah, the setup is pretty much exactly the same as Titan's Grave, which
Yes. I will say, though, as with most shows, there are always drawbacks. And for me, and again, this is my personal opinion, those drawbacks, I don't like how heavily edited it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it comes across as too much production, not enough showing the game.
I can definitely get with that. One thing that actually really jarred me, and I didn't notice it until episode 2, was when they insert the sound effects.
Yes.
That really, really irked me in episode 2. But I like you, I love the player interaction. Seeing Chris Hardwick and Jonah Hill together. Their interaction in episode 2 just had me just howling. That was really good. But I think what actually hooked me in is it kind of goes back to Mercer, and he was able to sort of give them a starting point that was very effective, because with a lot of the groups I've played with, that's always been the first sticking point you come to is, well, why are we together? Why does this group exist? And being able to go, oh, well, you're all part of this other group that is doing this thing, so we're going to call you to go do this thing. I love that they brought it together like that.
Yeah, that's for me, at least, as a DM, that's the hardest part of the game, is getting the characters hooked into the story. Because once they're hooked, it pretty much runs itself.
Well, exactly.
right. Sometimes you just have to throw it back on the player a little bit there too, and just say, look, you guys, you need to engage yourselves as much as I engage you. You can't just leave that all up to the DM to make this a game for you to play.
Indeed.
I think the editing was very heavy. Just from the first episode that I watched, I noticed that was a very consistent complaint. And I think when you come from watching a show like Critical Role, where you see every moment of the game, it can be a little shocking, I suppose, to then watch something that's so heavily cut. You feel like you're missing sections of it. You feel like you're missing out on part of it. So that, I would agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean,
Feels kind of like a best of role.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
And there's a lot of little things that are behind the scenes that I feel would allow us to get to know, the players and the characters better, that we're just missing out on. So it doesn't
100%.
feel... Yeah, it just doesn't feel as personal. So... But, to each their own. I'm sure that there are those out there that just absolutely love Force Grey.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad way of doing it. It's just different.
Yes.
So.
I know I'll keep watching. I'm really enjoying it. But, yeah, there's drawbacks.
Indeed. So, moving forward, Unfortunately, we didn't get to post it last week because because of my internet shenanigans. But many thanks to Joseph Tracy at TimeNight113 for making sure we had the correct link for the T-shirt contest. That link should still be in the description below. And the T-shirt contest winner was revealed. It was the Against the Chroma Conclave by Antmageddon. Antmageddon has had art featured here before on previous episodes. Excellent artist. Not the shirt that I voted for, but it was either Against the Chroma Conclave or the one I voted for. So I'm still glad Chroma Conclave won.
Oh, I won't say which one I voted for. It was this shirt that won. I absolutely loved this design. Yeah, I thought it was amazing, and I loved how it featured the entire Critical Role group and just the dragons behind it. It was really good. So, I mean, they were all amazing, and it was difficult. I was literally sitting there just staring at those designs it was a good 5-10 minutes, just thinking, how will I even vote? But I wanted to vote because I felt like, you have to be part of that community. So I really love this design, and yay, Antmageddon. Antmageddon.
Yeah, I misspelled
You misspelled it.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Congratulations.
Also down in the links in the description, the missing footage from episode 60 was provided by Critical Scope. It shows we only missed about a minute or so, and it was so cute, such a cute minute. If you have not seen it, definitely go take a look.
Yeah, it was adorable. So glad that Critical Scope found that, and thank you so much to the fan who had it on his or her phone and submitted that in.
Absolutely. This is one of the great things about being part of this community. With other communities, it's, you have to see it, go watch it. And it's, you have to have the official, either the TV show or subscribe to a certain channel. And you can only see it if you're a subscriber. But with the way, Critical Role is set up and the critters do things, it's just, you missed it, here you go. I love it. So Kat, since you put in these additional announcements, would you like to go ahead and read them off?
Oh yes, you know me. I'm always adding things.
That's fine.
I did notice that on the Geek and good. On the Geek and Sundry website, they have released an article on the Feywild. So we were discussing the Feywild in depth in our last podcast, but this is a very good, just a little article that brings out a few poignant facts in relation to the Feywild. So go check that out. Also, Critical Role has finally released the panel that Matt and Marisha did in Mackay. Very well edited. I love some of the additions that they put on that video. Matt does like a Golem impression, and Critical Scope has done like a little Golem matchup with his impression, and just little things like that. So it's definitely worth a watch. The panel was amazing live. I enjoyed it just as much rewatching it. I did want to shoot a massive thanks to my husband, though, who doesn't watch Critical Role at all and doesn't even particularly like the show. I've tried to get him into Critical Role on a number of occasions, and he's like, no, not for me, and that's fine. That's more than fine. But my husband actually spent quite a lot of time with Critical Scope, getting that footage together and uploading it and doing, actually recording it initially and going out and getting a camera and mic and everything like that. So he put so much work and some funds into making sure that panel was just the best quality, and I love him to death. He's just so amazing that he would do that when he doesn't even watch the show.
That is above and beyond the Call of Duty.
Yeah, it was crazy. He was like texting me and he's like, oh, should I get, a camera and should I get this? And I'm like, dude, like, don't worry about it. But he's like that. Whenever he does something, it has to be the best. So thank you so much
many thanks to him.
And I know he listens to this podcast, even though he doesn't watch the show. So love you. Also, I know that I had a fan question that I was supposed to ask at the panel. I didn't ask it because we had the camera kind of on his lap, and the microphone was separate, and it's very, very sensitive. And I didn't know how it would go if I had like a mic near it and then asking questions. I didn't really know how that would all go, so I didn't want to cause any problems there, so I didn't actually ask that question. So to that fan, I am so sorry. I think it was in relation to Gilmore's spell. I was going to ask that question, but there was a ton of amazing fan questions, so definitely go and ask that, and maybe we can obtain the answer to that question later on.
Indeed.
In some other way.
Yes, Kalia and I will be at Gen Con, and at least I know I am. Hopefully Kalia will be able to as well. But I'll be at the Critical Role panel at Gen Con. So if you forward me the question from the fan, we'll go ahead and ask it there, because I know it was promised, and we will make sure it gets done.
Yes, you're both going to Gen Con. I'm so excited about that. You're both running D&D games.
Yes, we are working with Baldman Games, and we will be running some of the Adventure League stuff that Baldman Games puts out. So,
fantastic.
Any critters that are going to Gen Con, stop by the Baldman Games play area, and you will be able to meet myself and Kalia.
Awesome.
Yay.
And hopefully during one of our off shifts, there will be a critter meetup, and we'll get to meet you guys there as well.
That'd be amazing. The last announcement was there was an animation recently released on YouTube for episode 44 of Critical Role, Vex's Death Scene. This animation was done by Takayuki, spelled Takayuki, Takayuki. It is just the most adorable animation clip, and the feels, like the cutscenes with the facial expressions and everything. It's like, I just want this person to animate the entire show. I know that would probably take this poor person their entire life to do.
Yes.
But the feeling behind this just short animated clip was just, it was perfect. It was spot on. So hopefully Akiva can put that link down below for you guys, and check it out.
That link is indeed down in the description below, and it does have a feels warning attached to it, so be prepared for tears.
It's amazing.
And one final announcement that is actually on the next page. A panel at TwitchCon has been announced with some of the most inspiring and amazing DMs out there. Among them, Mr. Matthew Mercer.
Yes.
That link is also that link and all of the other links that we've mentioned in these announcements are down in the description, so please feel free to peruse them at your leisure.
That is going to be an amazing panel. I know this is a Critical Role podcast, and a lot of people are all, Critical Role is everything, and that's 100%, like, Critical Role is amazing. But there are actually quite a lot of D&D and RP shows and games out there that show different styles of running Dungeons and Dragons and different RPs. So you've got DMs like Adam Coble and Silent Osiris, Silent Osiris does a show called The West Marches, which is a Dungeons and Dragons, kind of like a twisted fairy tale kind of a take on D&D. And of course Adam Coble is just amazing. He runs Roll20, or does a lot of like promotional stuff for Roll20, and runs some amazing RP games. So it's going to be a great panel. Definitely check it out.
Indeed. So, comments from our last episode of Gilmore's Glorious Gossip. This week it comes from John O'Brien. John O'Brien writes, did anyone else feel Taliesin was effectively saying no instead of yes and here, in reference to the Keyleth Wet Willy? It was an interesting choice by Matt to allow the gloves to work on a melee attack. Although, as DMs, we tend to sort of advocate for the yes and, there are times when you probably should say no in order to maintain the fun. And even if you don't, saying no is always a valid option. It's not usually the fun option, but sometimes it is necessary. In this particular case, I just have to ask, really, who wants a wet willy? So
I think, and I believe you addressed this last week, where it was kind of a brick joke. I know this particular situation, I didn't see it so much as Taliesin saying no, so much as Taliesin telling Marisha, okay, the joke didn't work, it fell flat, let's move on. And I kind of got the impression that Matt was agreeing with Taliesin and being like, okay, let's just move this on, the joke is done, let's go.
Possibly. Quite possible.
I know I personally got the impression that Marisha was just trying really, really hard to make that joke happen, and it just wasn't working out. The feel wasn't there.
Indeed. Kat, anything you want to add?
Oh yeah, she was trying a little hard to get that one across. I think initially in the moment, I would agree with you, Akiva. Taliesin was just going, look, Percy isn't going to want a wet willy, so if there's any possible chance of him avoiding it, he will. And of course, he's got those awesome gloves, so why wouldn't that come into effect? I do know that Matt was very distracted in that moment as well, so he couldn't really monitor the situation or apply any kind of ruling to that situation initially, which is, I think, why it kind of snowballed out of hand a little bit, was because Matt wasn't really focusing on that interaction at the time. But I don't think he was trying to block her because he was trying to be a bad sport. I think he was simply trying to play to his character and what his character would have done in that situation. But it's a good point. It's a good point, John.
Indeed, very true. So moving into the episode itself. Holy cow, a lot went on as far as character conversations and everything.
I absolutely loved this episode, and I really love that we have Amber on our podcast today, because some of the conversations that took place are right in Amber's alley. I mean, we're pretty much talking about what she does. So I really loved it. I can't wait to talk about it. I do want to touch before we jump into it though, their first live show. Wow.
It was intense.
Wasn't that just the amount of effort and work that would have gone on behind the scenes, just getting everybody there, getting all the audience settled, and then being able to still broadcast it to all of us back on Twitch. Amazing effort, well done. There was a lot of viewers that weren't too happy about it. Which I completely understand, and maybe we can talk about that a bit later, but for me personally, I felt like I was sitting with a group of my fellow critters watching Critical Role, and I was, every time I laughed, they were laughing with me, and every time I went, oh no, they were oh noing with me, and that for me just heightened it all. And I also felt like they were playing the actors were playing so much better. There was a lot of comments, they were playing to the crowd and they were trying to push too many jokes out and things like that. So we can maybe discuss that a bit, but for me personally, I really enjoyed it.
Well, before we get into the story of the episode, let's go ahead and discuss it now.
Okay.
As far as the comment of, they were playing to the crowd and, they were trying to push jokes too much, Honestly, I thought they were playing less to the crowd and having more fun with it.
I really felt like they were energized almost by,
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
by being on stage. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, instead of it being I've had a really long day, but we're getting paid to do this, it was I've had a really long day, let's go hang out with friends.
That was definitely the impression I got. It felt very natural for something that was being presented, you know.
Yes.
And obviously there's going to be some degree of discomfort, and I really love at the very beginning when Matt came out, him kind of playing to the audience his nervousness. I love when he does that, and he does that at most of the panels. He does that sort of thing. I feel like that's kind of his icebreaker before he gets down to business.
For for an actor and that sort of thing, you sort of, when you get out on stage, you don't normally have the opportunity to address the fact that you're going to be nervous. The vast
Mm-hmm.
majority of people are nervous when they do anything in front of a large group of people. So I love it when you can sit there and address the fact that, yeah, you're kind of nervous being in front of all these people, and it helps calm you down.
Yeah, that honesty about being nervous, I think,
Oh, yeah.
really, yeah, as you were both saying, was amazing, and really lent to the fact that they felt like they could be honest because they were with friends. They weren't, they weren't pandering to an audience they didn't know, and that just added to it. That was fantastic. In a recent Periscope, Matt actually said that Laura was belching behind stage because she was so nervous, which I thought was adorable. And then, of course, on stage, she did let rip an epic belch, and I'm like, you could only do that around friends and family, right? You wouldn't probably do that if you were doing a play or any kind of live performance, but I loved it.
Indeed. And can I just throw props to the critters that were actually in the audience? You know, at the beginning of the live stream, the I can't remember his name. Please forgive me, Geek and Sundry. But the MC of the evening, as it were,
Right.
um, he had asked the audience, feel free to laugh, feel free to cheer, feel free to, give out those woohoos, but please don't go shouting ideas. Don't,
It's not
prompt.
Rocky Horror. Yep.
Exactly. Don't prompt the players. And they didn't. And it was awesome, the level of self-control and etiquette that everybody showed. So major props to the audience
Yes.
for restraining themselves, because I guarantee you there were at least a quarter of that audience sitting there going, oh, what, they need to do this, they need to do this.
And if I could just hop in there to add, I want to give a special shout out to Dusty, GeoNerd, at
I
GeoNerd
was
on
just
Twitter.
thinking, yes.
I saw him in the audience and like zeroed in, and I was like, yep, I am you right now. You are me. He felt like my avatar. And I love that they did the audience pans occasionally so you could see what was going on. Normally that takes me out of it, but for this I was really into that.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know who Dusty is, he does a lot of the gifts. A lot of the...
Dusty's a beautiful human being.
Yeah, and he's just amazing. And if you ever follow his Twitter, you will not regret it. Like some of the things he puts up. So, props and shout out to him. He was definitely seeable in the crowd.
Indeed.
Excuse me.
No worries. Moving into the actual story. We start out with them walking down the street of Singhorn, with Garmelie invisibly hanging on to Grog's pants. As Grog said, pull my finger.
We get the fart joke straight up.
Yes.
Why not? I thought this was interesting. I would have thought that in a city such as Singon, that they would have some sort of warding or something in place when it comes to invisible creatures passing through their gates. I thought that was really interesting that an invisible creature could just pass through the gates of a High Elven city and not be detected. But
well, the problem with doing something as big as, or doing something like that for a city as large as Singhorn, you know, you could put it over the gates so that anything that passes through the gates becomes visible. But if something decides to go over the wall, well, then it's going to stay invisible, and it provides a false sense of security that way. It makes more sense for that sort of thing to be done inside a house. By the same token, we don't really know how powerful Garmelie is.
that's true.
So maybe there was something along those lines, but for story purposes, Matt judged that he was just powerful enough to get by it without having to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. I know I'm really enjoying Garmelie as a character. I think he's an interesting addition.
Very childlike, in my opinion, and it's awesome.
Yeah. I think it kind of came at a good place where you had the intersection of sort of the extremely serious storyline of, you know, Vax and their father and all of that, to also have this somewhat irreverent addition to lighten the tension a little bit.
Yes. And just to highlight how serious Vax and Vex were about, you know, being in the city, Kat, you actually made a note of what I'm about to bring up with Percy's reply.
Oh, I found this moment just so, and this comes down to me just really enjoying the live show and how it really brought out the characters a bit more. I feel like we don't see Percy's character come out as much as we saw in this episode, his true character, where he kind of turned to the twins and he said, "Look, we need to speak to who's in charge. Is your dad in charge?" And they said, "Well, he's a bureaucrat." And Percy's like, "Excellent." It was just the way he said it and that smile, and it's just like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. It was great to see that part of Percy come out.
Indeed. I mean, if you guys remember Percy's backstory, he may not have been raised to, you know, essentially rule Whitestone, but growing up in that sort of situation, you learn how to manipulate the bureaucracy quite well. So Percy was fully in his element there.
Mm-hmm. He speaks fluent bureaucrat.
Yes.
He does. Very well.
So they, you know, head in and they are headed to the twins' father's house. They come in and they're introduced to one of, I believe, one of the servants. And their father's new wife, and they get to see their half-sister. And then the video cuts out. Fortunately, you know, as we were saying during the announcements, Critical Scope provided the minute or so that we missed. And I thought it was really cute the way their half-sister, and please forgive me, I can't remember her name for the life of me.
I think it is Valora, what you have in the notes.
Valora.
Oh, yes!
Valora.
I wrote it down and then didn't even realize I wrote it down. Oh, it's one of those days.
Than you think.
I'm sorry. But yeah, Valora asks, you know, Are you guys warriors? And it was just so cute.
Yeah, I feel like that might have been a throwback to a previous conversation that they had off screen when, like, before Critical Role started and they were playing at home.
Yeah.
There was some sort of a conversation about being a warrior, and she kind of referenced to that. But I love when Matt goes Matt goes child, I guess you could say. Matt goes kid.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So adorable.
That is my favorite moment. My favorite Mercer moments are when he can throw himself into just RPing as a jubilant child.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And, although his voice is too deep to actually be to actually be a child's voice, he conveys child very well.
Oh yeah, you don't even notice.
Yes. And
Magic of acting.
yes. And thank you, Kat, for grabbing the stepmother's name, Devana. I had forgotten to grab that. But they learn that their father is assisting in building an army, and I honestly have no idea what Singorn's plan is.
It sounds like it's the same as any bureaucratic council's plan to deal with something that they're scared of, and that is build a massive army and just throw it at them, or it, and hope that they rise victorious. I mean, as they said, they asked him, are you going to join up with any other armies, or are you just going to go in by yourself? And he mentioned Fort Daxiel forces, scattered forces throughout, that they still had communication with, that they were going to join up with. But
it's the soldier in me, it just cringes at that, because it's like bureaucrats don't really understand war. They understand they have this army, they understand that the army needs to go and kill this dragon, but they don't understand what that army is going to need.
yes.
So,
I think that was where Fort Daxiel was coming into play, though, is putting it in the hands of the remaining forces there. It seems like they're trying to unite that whole section of Taldore to work from that one location, which, for me personally, that makes me kind of nervous, the same way putting all the refugees in Whitestone makes me nervous. That's creating a target, and especially if they're creating a military target.
yes.
That's kind of frightening to me, even if it is all the elves that you can get together. I don't know about that.
Well, here's the thing. I have the sneaking suspicion that the elves of Singorn are going to put the human forces on the front line, because elves, being as long-lived as they are, tend to have the idea that humans procreate like rabbits and will be able to replenish their numbers in what the elves see as no time at all. And unfortunately, it just does not work that way. So.
Perhaps. So I found a comment on Twitter that was interesting, and I thought I'd bring it up really quickly. It's by Ahead Warp 9, and he mentioned that he had been thinking ever since the attack on Amon that no one has checked on Craghammer. No one has asked about it, and what status it might actually have. He mentioned that Umbrasil lay claim to Western, and may after Singorn. So, where did Voragul end up heading after the destruction of Draconia? Maybe he went to Craghammer?
Well, the problem with Craghammer is it's underground. The dwarves are very good at protecting their home, in that the dragon is going to have to dig to get to Craghammer, and the dwarves are going to realize it's coming. They're going to feel the tremors of it digging. Essentially, Vorgol, if Vorgol went towards, or Ryshawn for that matter, if they went towards Craghammer, wherever they pop up, the Dwarven army is going to be there waiting.
Yes.
On
So it would be an interesting. I mean, it's a possible maybe group of allies still that they haven't quite tapped into yet.
Absolutely.
My issue with Craghammer is more that they're so much on the outside kind of area of the map. They're almost sort of easy to ignore, if that makes any sense at all.
Yes.
Because they're really far away and kind of not really doing anything to the bigger picture.
Yes.
I don't like that Vorgol and Ryshawn are both kind of wild cards at this point. Ryshawn especially has me just hugely paranoid.
Very true. The one thing that I want to bring up, sort of a side note, Sil Logus brings up in the chat the theory that Kaylee is Ryshawn. The problem with that is that Kaylee and Ryshawn were both seen at the same time as separate entities in Amon, when the Chroma Conclave attacked Amon. So, unfortunately, that theory doesn't really fit.
Right. And that would just be really cruel.
Technically, I would say it's possible, with possibly replacing and integrating herself. But I would say it's unlikely.
Is it possible? Again, I'm going to say no, because they were seen at the same time. Kaylee was at the at Greyskull Keep when Ryshawn was attacking it, and we saw them on the field at the same time.
True.
So unless Kaylee has been killed and replaced,
which is what I was thinking,
like after that,
yeah,
that would be possible. But again, I'm going to say unlikely.
Yeah. I hope not.
So.
I still don't like having them in the wind like that, though. Thordak, staying put. We kind of know where Thordak's going to be, but having the white dragon and what is it, the green dragon on the loose?
Yeah, Ryshawn is the green and Vorgol is the white.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of finding out where they landed. And wherever Vorgol went...
I mean, he could still be at Draconia, for all we know.
It's possible.
Which would be an interesting battle.
Because, I mean, yes, Draconia was destroyed, and I'll throw quotes around that, but we don't know if it's destroyed as in completely demolished, or destroyed as in they no longer are considered a power capable of doing anything.
Yes.
So. But moving back into the story, during the whole conversation, it was really weird seeing this play out. Percy was, playing court while the twins' father was wanting to play war. And
right.
That's something I'm not used to. Elves are usually slow to act, and I know it's been a little while, so, they're in the build up to action. But usually the way I envision elves, they're always ready to play court.
Right, and I think someone like their father too, you would think would be a little more prone to diplomatic discussion. I think Matt mentioned a number of times he was very tired, very exhausted. Obviously, having his two estranged children in his house, along with all of these strangers in his house, would have been very taxing for him on top of that as well. I think anyone in that situation probably doesn't really want to beat around the bush and play politics. He was trying to be straightforward and getting to the point.
True. Very true.
I think overall, I liked Matt's take on their father, because we've had so many things about their father for so long that they've kind of painted this picture of just this detached, uncaring asshole, for lack of a better word. But Matt's portrayal of this man, although he was still was still very realistic, in that he gave the person more substance.
I fully agree there. In fact, I was sitting there wondering the entire time, what are Vax and Vex really complaining about if this is their father? I mean, granted, this is just a small snippet of his life, and he's probably trying to put on a certain face for them and for these strangers that are in his house.
Yep.
But
Alright.
I almost had to wonder, could it possibly be that their father regrets how the past has gone and was reaching out to them in some small way?
And see, I didn't see that so much. What I saw was more the bitterness about this situation where he split with their mother. And basically we got a great big slice of that with that exchange about, the poverty. I raised you up out of, this poor situation. I kind of got the impression that he felt like they should be grateful for what he did, and that there was a lot of bitterness there. Because obviously Vax and Vex were upset at being removed from the situation and brought into this foreign, elven city that didn't accept them as who they are, didn't respect them at all, and then essentially being told, oh, well, this was a mistake, I shouldn't have done that.
It comes from the concept of always realizing that there's not one story one side to every story. There's usually multiple sides, and whoever's telling the story believes it 100% to be, that they're the good person, that they're the ones who have been wronged. And I think Matt took the father, the character of the father, and thought, okay, well, from his perspective, he was doing everything that he felt he could possibly do to give these kids the best upbringing that he felt that they could have. Was it the correct kind of upbringing for them? Possibly not. And in saying that, if he'd left them with their mother, they'd probably be dead. So it's kind of it's
a layered
perspective
issue.
It's a perspective of the storyteller and who's actually telling the story. And at the end of the day, no one's really right or wrong. I feel like a couple of things that he said, it's not me that thinks that you guys aren't worthy. It's not me who thinks that you guys shouldn't belong here. It's other people, which kind of made me feel like maybe he was getting very pressured from those around him when he had these children in his care, that they didn't really belong there. And maybe he was getting a lot of flack from the political group that he was a part of. And that maybe made him seem detached and distant to them as kids.
True.
There's so many layers to that relationship that came out in this interaction that really made it more than just my dad's an asshole and we're abandoned kids and that's the story. And I love that. That's fantastic storytelling.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving only a step forward, when they finally convince their dad to help them talk to the High Warden, the note and Percy's reaction to the note, the first note rather. There's a mistake here. That should be Lady Vixalia, Baroness of the Third House of Whitestone and Mistress of the Great Hunt.
And the crowd. The crowd erupted.
Yes. My jaw hit the floor. And did you see the look on Laura's face?
Yeah, that was pretty priceless.
Oh, that was... If there's... You know, for the shippers, you know... there have been 3 great ships, as I will call them. You've got Vaxlith, you've got Pikeland, and you have Persalia. And since Percy raised Vexalia into Baroness level, there's not a court or kingdom in Exandria that would look down on Percy and Vexalia hooking up now.
And I do want to hop in on you for a second, Akiva. It is Mistress of the Grey Hunt. Taliesin actually clarified that on Twitter.
Okay.
Oh, an arrow runner.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Arrow Runner is also correcting me. I do apologize.
I think it was Mango Travelin had asked him about that on Twitter, and he did give the correction, because his mic was a little weird. All of their mics were a little off.
Yeah. There might have been a little pop or something in there when he said gray, and I heard it as great. So I apologize for getting that wrong. At the time, I was watching it, a week after the fact, simply because I had no internet during the actual live stream.
No, I thought that was just amazing in general, whipping that out. And then, of course, you get all the fallout after.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, I regret that.
Yeah, that was the best. I think I regret my decision. Because she was owning it. And, of course, if you're going to give someone like Vexalia a title, she's going to own it.
Yes. And... Go ahead.
I did want to touch on something that Arrow Runner brought up, which was also quite amazing, the quote. So there was a moment where the conversation with the twins and their father got very intense, and Vexalia said, if I could take the blood that is yours out of me, I would do it. It was just that quote. The way she delivered it was just so intense, and really, just coming back a moment back to their relationship, showed this deep, I don't want to say hatred,
Bitterness.
but bitterness, hurt, pain.
Yes.
That she has in relation to her relationship with the father. So, yeah, Arrow Runner, I'm with you. That quote was amazing.
So I have to agree with your notes here, Kat. As far as Grog is concerned, peanut butter strong jaw.
Well, everyone was throwing titles around, and so he had to come up with his own title. Of course, it was peanut butter. Why would it not be? Yeah.
Oh.
And his pronunciation of good day.
Today.
He was trying so hard, and
yeah.
loved it.
And I love how none of the rest of Vox Machina corrected him. They recognized that he was trying hard, and wanted to give him that ego boost to because this is somewhere he clearly does not fit in.
Yes. Not that he would know that.
Well, being a barbarian and they're in a city, I think he does know that, but at the same time,
He needed a win.
yeah,
He deserved that win.
yes.
And it was funny.
So they, head getting the scroll or the letter of introduction. They head off to secure some lodging, and once they get into their rooms, they all meet in one, and they talk with Garmelie to find out exactly what he wants them to steal.
Yes. Before we move on, though, we did just get a question in our chat. Did you feel like their dad was trying to make amends, or was he just trying to move on with what they needed at the moment? That's by Pancakes in chat.
So I don't think it was so much a trying to make amends as it was a look, we both have had a past together. It wasn't what either one of us wanted it to be. So let's start fresh and go from here. Is what I got from it. Like he was reaching out to get a new start.
Interesting. See, I saw he was shutting it down, and he was basically saying, okay, you are my children, you will always be my children, but obviously we are not going to be a family. This is not a family by any means. I saw there being absolutely no move towards reconciliation.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. He called them his children. He recognized them as being family. It was not the family he wanted. It was not the family they wanted. But they are still family, and he's going to give them some assistance. Can we have a new start? Here you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't feel like he was making any large means to make amends as such. He was definitely trying to explain his side of the situation.
Yeah.
I would like to think that it's because he was so tired that maybe he was letting his guard down more than previously. Yeah, alright, so she saw no saw no move. So yeah, I didn't see any literal like, you're here, let's make amends. It was more, this is the situation, what are you guys here for? Okay, let's do that and then get out of my house. Was definitely the feel I got from it.
Como si, como sa. I don't know what that saying actually translates to, but I know it means, tomato type thing.
To each his own.
Yeah.
To each his own. As Josh says in chat, it seems to me that Dad, while proud of his kids, still has practical social concerns regarding the elves he has to work and live with. He's embarrassed of his indiscretion, but is still impressed with what they've done. I've added on to the end. Josh, 100% agree. I felt that he brought up on a number of occasions, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I've recognized what you've done. You guys have impressed people and moved people, which I've never done in my life. But while I feel all of these things, you don't belong here. This isn't, your city. This isn't your people. Other people will not accept you in this place. And that's just the way it is. We will never be a family. And that's just something that we all have to accept.
Yeah. As Pancakes points out, I thought he made several statements, i.e., I took the brunt of the mockery, etc., that made it seem like he was trying to say in some small way that he did care.
Yes.
And that's why I'm thinking it was this isn't what we want, but let's take it and move forward. And Matt has his way of playing the elves I have my way of playing the elves. I like to think that the elves, although not necessarily going to welcome the half-elves with open arms and, make them a full part of their society, they're at least going to understand, well, love is going to arise where love arises, and if it happens to be with a human and half-elves come out of it, okay.
Yeah.
But
That definitely comes down to different worlds, and
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
if you ever play a Dungeons and Dragons game, to always just sit down with your GM and go, hey, look, in your world, how are half elves viewed? And you will get a different answer every
Oh,
time.
yes.
I guarantee it.
You have 6 DMs in a room and ask them about a half-elves, and you'll get 6,
They're gonna tell you.
maybe 7 different answers.
Yeah, that seventh one will be like, but in this situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, they go to their rooms, they sit down and they talk with Garmelie. It turns out he wants them to steal a piece of a threshold crest and the High Warden's hat. Now, the threshold crest, I had the same reaction as the players. You want what? Like, the hat I can understand because he's a satyr and they're sort of pranksters. And stealing a hat isn't that big of a deal. It's a prank that causes social embarrassment. No big deal.
Or is it? Or is it? We don't really know much about this hat or what it's, because she said that it depends on where she's going and what she's doing in relation to if she puts this hat on, and no one's actually done a check on this hat.
True, and by the same token, though, being the High Warden, she's going to a lot of social functions, so, different hats for different occasions.
You think it's just a fancy hat?
It's just a fancy hat, is what I'm thinking.
It's a very nice hat.
But, eventually they're like, well, we agreed to it, so let's go. And so they go talk with High Warden Terelda. They get a little bit of history of the Shademirk Bog. And, as Kat put into the notes to expand on what I had put in there, there was an archfey that was turned on by his beloved who had grown spiteful, and it turned his heart dark, and which physically changed the Feywild around him. He became one with this new corrupted land and started spreading it. Sort of coming into a balance of sorts. Essentially pushing to the edge of the Gilded Run, a river that runs around the Shademirk.
Yeah, the High Warden mentioned that they let it exist because it became its own biome and has every right pretty much to exist, despite its obvious evil core. And I really loved this story. I love when things like this have those kind of myth stories behind them that gives them kind of a purpose of being there. It's not like, oh, this is just an evil biome and there's a tree in it and you should go there. It's got like a history to it, which makes it even cooler. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Matt is showing off, I think, a little bit with this. Obviously, everything that a DM puts into the world should have some small story attached to it.
Sure.
Even if it's just your standard healing potion that you find in any number of general stores. Have at least an idea of who it is that's making these, whether it's coming from a local temple to help support their um, their programs to feed the starving and help the poor, etc., etc.
Yeah. I will issue a challenge to everyone who's listening to this podcast. In your next Dungeons and Dragons game, whenever your DM takes you to a new place, ask them for a bit of history. And see what your DM says.
Yes. Now,
and
don't
just ask.
don't be surprised when they look confused for a second, and then have to come up with something off the top of their head. But as a DM, it is something you need to keep in mind that there are going to be players that want the history of something. So.
And I love those players.
Yes.
They're great.
So.
I think just from a narrative perspective, I know as a writer, someone who has been a writer for a long time, one of the first things you kind of figure out is everything is there for a reason. Everything has to have a reason to exist. Even if nobody ever knows what that reason is, it got there somehow. You know?
Yeah.
Yep. So, DMs, when you're rolling up magic items to distribute to the party, make sure you know why it's there. Or at least how it got there.
Yes.
So, as they are getting ready to go, Scanlan pops up with, "I'm a connoisseur of the haberdasher arts. Can we see your hats?" And, the High Warden summons what she calls a servant. Turns out to be her son.
Yes.
At least that's what I took away from it when he called her mother.
Yeah.
Unless, maybe mother was an alternate title for the High Warden.
No, I think it was pretty pretty black and white. It was definitely her son, which was cute, and he played her son really well. I love the conversation that they had, the transition of just asking the questions to try to obtain these items for Gamili by both Vexalia and Scanlan was spot on. They were really good. Vexalia sadly did not obtain any information about the threshold crest piece that she was trying to pull out of the High Warden, but she transitioned into it so smoothly.
Yes.
I forget how she did it. It was something like she was just asking about whether the High Warden went between planes herself, and how did she do that, and there's like these portal places, or where can we locate these portal places? And it was just so well done, and you could see Travis next to her just doing the whole too smooth
Absolutely
line, because she did that so well.
Because she fit in with the, hey, we're fighting these dragons and we need every advantage we can get. How did you guys? We know that the city can come over thanks to the Threshold Crest. How do your scouting parties and individuals get across?
Totally innocent, guys.
Absolutely innocent.
No satire trying to obtain anything here, I promise.
Pancakes does bring up an interesting point about the hat, though. Is this going to bite them in the butt, since Scanlan specifically mentioned the hat that they stole? I feel like it was enough that the High Warden would know who took it. Well, going back to my thought that it's just a hat, the High Warden's probably going to be, a little upset, but it's just a hat. Maybe make him pay for it. Maybe, put him in the stocks for 24 hours. But I don't think anything serious is going to come from it.
I don't know. I don't think it's just a hat.
I think it is. I think it is. But, that does bring up the interesting thing, talking about the Threshold Crest. Grog had seen the little indention in the back wall. And I think, although the party never actually got near the wall, didn't try to go in or anything, I think that that's where the threshold crest is. Crests are, rather.
Okay.
There's definitely something going on there.
Yeah, I mean, for all I know, it could just be a vault for the city funds. But who knows? And then, with Keyleth asking for a gift shop, after they head into, or after they get the hat, they head by the Lost and Found in order to, act as sort of a gift shop type thing. And that whole scene was hilarious.
It was hilarious. Yeah.
There was one line, and it's killing me. I can't remember who said it, but it was something along the lines of like a Singorn Walmart gift bag, and I just lost it at that.
Matt, that's what Matt described.
That was Matt, yeah.
Yeah, Matt described when Laura said that she's reaching in to...
That was the one line. I was holding it together, and then that one hit, and it was like, no, I'm laughing till I can't breathe for the first time this episode.
Yes.
It's not in there, but much needed relief.
Indeed. And then, Grog with the potato.
Yes, the potato. How did that potato get there? I want to know the potato story.
And if you ask Matt, I guarantee you he will have an answer.
He'll have a story. He'll have a reason.
Yes. So, after their meeting, they decide to go back to their rooms for a nap time.
Oh, dear.
With their hat. With their stolen hat. Mission semi-successful.
Yes. And, they go for the nap, and then they start heading in one room, and Scanlan and Vex both try out a lie to, as to why everybody is in the same room. Yeah. And the one that sticks is Scanlan's. Oh, we're polyamorous. And for everybody at home, it's a relationship thing, kids. Go ask your parents. We are not going to be responsible for ruining your childhood.
I already see all the angry parents tweeting at us, Akiva. Contacting us.
They can tweet at us all they want. We're letting them decide how much they want their children to know. So it's in their court, and if they want us to raise their kids, sorry, that's not what we're here for. But
I loved everything about that scene, though. I lost it. I was laughing so hard. Yes. And I'm like barely holding it together right now. And then afterwards, Liam got in the best comment ever. It was, well, how about we take a hot nap? And then Matt was right on there with, I thought that's what you just did.
Didn't you just take a hot nap?
Lost it so hard.
And he was playing to Grog. Like, Vax was playing to Grog quite a lot. Like, I've got this kink, I think it was, or something that needs working out. And then afterwards they came out and he's like, oh, thanks so much, Grog, feels so much better. And it was just, they just play it so well.
Yes.
If you watch the criticals, if you watch the panel in Mackay, one of the questions that was asked of Madame Marisha was, what is something that makes you guys feel really uncomfortable? And that was actually Tuck, I believe, who asked that question. At what point do you guys just say, nope, that's too far? Because they're very open to gritters, like, just taking their own stories and doing what they want with things. And they said, look, we're pretty much open to everything, but they recently read some kind of a fan fiction story where this writer put the players themselves, and not the actual characters, but the players themselves in this hot nap situation that just went to a whole nother level. And I kind of thought of that moment or that discussion in this moment, and I think they accept that a lot of critters kind of probably fan fiction this a little bit every now and then, and they're just so comfortable with being like,
I thought it was really interesting,
okay,
just that Liam was kind of the one pushing that, because he's the one who's gotten a lot of the whole the Vaxileth versus Vaxmore type issue, and then of course you have people like me, admittedly, who are on the, well, why can't we OT3? Why can't we have this be a poly ship?
yeah,
And I think he was just kind of winking at us. Like, I was
Yeah.
really strongly getting that wink. We know, we heard you. You know,
yes, yeah.
I love it.
Sam and Vex both. Or Sam and Liam both, excuse
Sam
me.
and Liam both. Yeah.
And I even said Vex instead of Vax. Oh, man. Oh, it has been a day. So, yeah. It was just ingenious, though, what Percy and Keyleth came up with. They created a stone crest of Whitestone out of the threshold of their room and broke it and gave Garmelia a piece of that. A threshold crest.
Yep.
Technically correct.
Yep. And Taliesin, I love the Feywild. It was a perfect answer to that little riddle.
That's exactly how you play the Feywild.
Yes.
You trick the tricksters if you can.
Mhm.
It was perfect.
That whole plan just like screamed Talisin's thought process, you know?
And-
Like
I
that,
almost
the way his brain works, like, oh yeah, he's at home in the Feywild.
Oh, yeah. And did you see Matt's face as he was doing it? He was so
Oh, it was
proud.
precious.
He was so
Yeah,
proud
it
of Taliesin.
Yeah, it was precious that they figured that out. I think Mercer was really proud of them.
Yes.
And all I could think of was, I wonder how much time Matt put into, probably not a lot, probably about maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but into prepping for them to actually steal this piece of crest. And that's just not... But it happens to the DMs all the time, right? You prep these side arcs and you prep these side stories. It's like, well, then they're going to go here and they're going to do that. Well, no, that's not actually what they're going to do at all. They're going to completely bypass that, and all of that prep and work that you put in, out the window, no longer valid. But yeah, when your players do something that amazing,
Yes.
you can be mad.
And see, I was really on the fence as to whether or not that was what happened, or Matt had actually intentionally given them a request that was asking quite a lot that they would most likely not be able to make happen, to
Yeah.
see what kind of creative solutions they came up with. Like,
Right, yes.
I know personally, if I was the DM, I have a tendency to give my players situations they can't overcome at face value. You're going to have to figure out an alternate method.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of those DMs that I fall into the trap. And yes, it is a very bad trap to fall into, but I fall into it every time. I underestimate my players.
Oh, I never, yeah. I do sometimes. But players are creative.
Yes.
You never know when they're going to whip out an octopus and,
Yeah, indeed.
completely dominate a boss battle with your octopus,
Indeed. A callback to Desert Winds.
Players are amazing.
Yes, and I owe all of my players a huge apology for underestimating them. So DMs, keep that in mind as you go forward. But Pancakes in the chat asks, were you disappointed that there was no heist?
No.
Actually, personally, no. No. I'm kind of excited for them to get out of this city and get on with it.
Indeed. Amber?
I wasn't disappointed there was no heist at all because I think the solution we got was just so satisfying.
Yes.
We got the humor with the hat, and it ended up, not being a huge caper like they were thinking it was going to be. And then having a creative solution that was that satisfying, yeah, way, way better than a heist, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I was completely satisfied.
For me, not only was their answer absolutely satisfying, if they had gone through with the heist, that would have bitten them in the ass.
Yeah, that would have totally backfired at some point.
Yes.
Sangorn is just too strong. Yeah, that's why my brain was kind of thinking, well, maybe they weren't supposed to be able to do that one. Maybe that was part of the finding a creative solution.
Indeed, Matt
yeah.
has said in the past that there are times where he will put a goal or a boss or an enemy in front of the players that they're supposed to walk away from. And I think this was the heist portion. Excuse me. I think the heist portion was you need to walk away from this.
Right.
And honestly, their solution sort of underlined the inherent goodness that they don't see in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a great character moment, a great player moment all around.
And, Percy got to be clever. And
yes.
Whenever Percy gets to be clever, good things happen, right?
Usually. So after completing their end of the deal with Garmelie, they leave Singorn and start duskward towards the river, and they come across these grasses. And this has to be my new most strange thing I've ever seen in a D&D game. To clarify, Trinket starts eating on the grass, and Keyleth is like, no, the grass will hate you. And then when it doesn't, turn on Trinket, she gets all brassy and suck it, grass, and pisses the grass off.
Apparently you can eat it, but you cannot verbally insult it.
I think it had more to do with the fact that Trinket, being a bear, does have a connection with nature and thus the Feywild. So him eating the grass it's natural.
The bear being a bear.
But insulting the grass is kind of unnatural. So,
but then Percy got to flirt with the grass and tame the grass.
Percy flirted with it. Scanlan serenaded it. It was just weird. Oh.
The taming of the grass.
As Sam said, how do you want to mow this? So,
Yeah.
So at that point, the group heads into the Moonbrush Forest, and Garmelie warns them of some of the dangers. The lycanthropes, led by a lycanthrope named Ukarat. Lycanthrope hunters that will kill just about anything on sight. And pixies. My favorite D&D race right there. Pixies. So I'm hoping that in the next episode, we'll get to see some pixies.
Ooh.
But they come upon this area where there are a bunch of little trinkets and bones and such laying on the ground. And I can't remember if it was Vex or Keyleth that picked up the bone.
It was Keyleth.
I think it was Keyleth.
That's what I thought, but I didn't. I couldn't remember 100% clearly. So
Yeah, someone needs to tie her hands up,
yes,
I think.
this it confuses me that. I mean, I maybe it's because the Ashari focus on the earth, fire, wind, and water elements rather than like the Feywild or other planes, but it surprises me how little communication between Matt and Marisha there is when it comes to the Feywild. Like, I feel. Go ahead.
In relation to?
Well, I feel like Marisha would know. Don't pick the flowers. Don't insult the grass. Don't go picking up, weird bones you see laying on the ground.
Yes.
She's also really good, though, at suppressing player knowledge versus character knowledge. She
Correct.
really does play Keyleth kind of right off the cuff.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. And I kind of like the Keyleth is picking up things and insulting grass and picking flowers and doing these things, because then we get these moments. Matt is able to trigger stuff off them. If these guys just start crawling very carefully through the forest and they don't touch anything and they don't do anything, then nothing's... Well, I'm sure things will happen, but her inquisitive nature kind of leads to these encounters which are memorable in a way. So I also, like, going back to a previous podcast, I see her as a kid. She's in a land that she's very curious about, and so she picks up something like a bone that seems trivial. It makes sense.
True. Pancakes points out that he specifically mentioned that she wouldn't know. She knows the Prime material well, but not the Feywild. I understand that. But at the same time, the Feywild is essentially the embodiment of nature. So while she herself may not have gone to the Feywild, I feel like as a druid, other druids would have, and she, they would have told their druidic tribe, here are the rules of the Feywild.
Yeah, I think that discussion that Pancakes was referring to was on their critical, I keep saying critical scope because it's all on critical scope. On their Periscope that they did recently, she brought up that she and Matt had that conversation, and he had told her that she would know nothing. That is 100%. I'm kind of with you though, Akiva. Her being a druid, but not only that, but also a half elf. I feel like she would have a bit more of a connection to the Feywild than he's allowing her to have. But she's playing the character the way Matt has kind of asked her to play it, I guess.
Yeah. So, after Keyleth picks up the bone, a bear spirit appears and essentially traps them in its little mini domain. And Keyleth being a druid and her connection to nature, the bear spirit recognizes that and says, I'll give you a pass on this, but your friend is going to be my... what's the word I'm looking for?
Payment.
Yes. But then Trinket, comes forth and fights the bear spirit and claims her charge. Just showing some outstanding loyalty. And another tearjerker moment for me.
Yeah, this was another situation where a DM was taking the Ranger Beastmaster tree, which absolutely bombs something chronic, and through story is kind of buffing Trinket a bit, I believe, was the end result of this.
Yeah, so after Trinket proves the loyalty, the bear says, hey, nature itself seems to, you know, hold you in high regard. I will acquiesce to that. And walks through Trinket and Laura. Trinket then gets the Primal Fury ability and can now benefit from Vex's Hunter's Mark. Mm-hmm. And there was a little sparkly thing that happened with the necklace that thankfully Miss Arrow Runner posted a tweet here in the chat to explain exactly what happened. At LAURMISSESCRITS, Lar Mrs. Crits. I assume this is coming from Matt. But Trinket's necklace got a huge buff. If downed within 100 feet of Vex, he's immediately stabilized and put in the crystal. # Critical Role Live. So,
that's pretty cool.
That's just an amazing little... I have the hiccups and I don't know why. Sorry about that, guys. But that's just an amazing little buff there. That's just...
kind of like an emergency evac.
Yes. It as Arrow Runner follows up and says, basically it works even more like a Pokeball.
Yeah. And for someone like Vex, who has such a close connection with Trinket, that maybe Matt felt like something like that had to be given to her.
Well, I think a part of it comes from Matt feeling sorry for his friend Travis, because every time something starts to happen to Trinket, Laura takes it out on Travis.
She starts, like, physically beating him almost. What were you going to say, Amber?
I was going to say, I think not only that, but I'm kind of inclined to agree with what you were saying about it being a buff for the Beastmaster. Yeah. Because it is such a weak, such a weak path. You've almost got to buff up the pet a little bit, so to speak.
Yes. In my opinion, if you're a min-maxer and you want to, let's say you want to cross-class Rogue Ranger, you almost have to go the dual-wielding Ranger path rather than... Let me look up exactly what it's called real quick. Rather than the Beastmaster.
What were you looking up, sorry?
Is that the Hunter? Yes. So if you're min-maxing type thing, and you want to have a combat effective multi-class, or if you just want a very effective combat ranger, you almost have to go Hunter Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
But
and I really don't think you should have to pick one path over another in order to have just even basic combat effectiveness.
Agreed.
Realistically, the Beastmaster just doesn't have the combat effectiveness that it should have at higher levels, especially.
Especially since, Wizards took out the pet leveling, for lack of a better term. Because in 3.5, if you were a Beastmaster Ranger, your pet leveled with you.
Yeah.
So, Pancakes and Choreographed in the chat are both saying that Beastmaster needs an errata so bad. Choreographed expanding that all of Ranger needs an errata because it's his favorite class, so he might be biased.
Fair enough.
So, very true. But
I don't know,
that is... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in my opinion, the Hunter is pretty balanced. I
Yes.
genuinely don't feel the Beastmaster is balanced at all. And that's coming from someone who is a flavor player, not even a min-max player, but a flavor player. I just feel like once you get above level 6 or so, it starts to taper off like, okay, I should be getting stronger now.
Yes. But unfortunately, that's not the case. As it stands at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the episode leaves off. They moved into a Q&A, which was not posted to the internet, primarily because it was a VIP type thing, as I understand it.
Yes.
Which is all fine and dandy, even if it was, for the entire audience that was there. They did pay to be there, so I love the fact that they did a little bit extra for those that got to go there live.
Definitely, yeah.
It made it a little more interesting and a little more incentivized to go to the live show. Actually buy the ticket and be there.
Exactly, yes. Otherwise, you just stay at home and watch it on the stream. Why would you go?
Exactly.
Well, there's tons of reasons why you would, but
Well, yeah.
yes. It was a good choice.
Arrow Runner brings up a rather interesting little tidbit that I
Sure.
did not know. Arrow Runner says, "Oh, that reminds me. Marisha said on a recent Periscope that Keyleth almost took a point into Barbarian back when Keyleth was in her more angry phase, all the angry fire spells, but
Yes.
settled that Keyleth would stay with Druid." I did not know that.
Yeah, that was at the Mackay panel. Because someone asked if she could multi-class, what was she multi-class in? And she said, well, for a hot second, I thought about doing this. And it was an interesting choice. Out of all of the different things that she could have multi-class into, I would not have picked Barbarian, but that would have been interesting.
I wonder what a Barbarian Druid would look like, mechanics-wise.
Pretty sick. I'm just gonna... I think, personally.
So we will have to. I'll have to try that out sometime.
Yeah, I think Matt had the right idea there. You combine beast shape with barbarian rage, and woo.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeesh. So I see that you've added this comment here, Kat. Would you like to?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of just broach this with you guys because I read the comment and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So in a lot of other RP shows that I've watched, there have been implications of time skips in the shows. And I actually really enjoy time skips. Adam Coble is a prime example of a DM who loves to end a mission or an arc or a story and then go, okay, now 2 or 3 months have passed. What has your characters been doing in that 2 or 3 months? How has that mission or arc affected your characters? What has come of that story, character-wise? So, AKA Arashi on Reddit said, I have this idea that after all of the dragons has been dealt with, there may be a time skip of 2 years or so. Because the thing that would happen is that they would all split off and do their own thing. So he said Grog and Pike might go to aid Western and help rebuild Western. Vax goes off and does some work for the Raven Queen, perhaps, as her new warrior. Keyleth goes to the Ereshari and maybe finishes her Aramente. Percy goes back to Whitestone and does whatever a bureaucratic person does. So maybe, at the end of all of this, all of their different homes are going to be demolished. They're going to need rebuilding. They've got, personal storylines that perhaps they need to then deal with. Do we think that Matt is going to maybe do a time skip? And if so, do we think that they'll split up and do their own thing? Or what do you think might happen?
Honestly, that is far enough in the future that I'm going to say anything could happen, so I'm going to wait and see.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I have difficulty thinking about that far in the future. I don't think that, honestly, just the way I understand Matt's storytelling style, I don't really think he would do that long of a skip. You know, it's one thing to hand wave a month or two, but like a 2-year skip, I think would be a bit much. I just, it's hard to tell. You know, as for future, I don't know if we're even going to go there, to be honest with you. I think it's going to look more towards, okay, what's the next group? You know, what are we doing? What's the next story before it gets to there?
Yeah.
Or you think this might actually be it, the wrap?
Matt, I'm on board with whatever Matt and the crew decide to do, just because I'm there for his story and for their story and what they're telling.
Yes.
Matt has said before that he does have an end game plan, and I'm 100% there with him. You know?
You know, you mentioned, having them possibly wrap there. They're only level, 13, 14. I don't think they're going to wrap there.
No, I think there's probably going to be some after that, but I think I misspoke a little bit. What I meant to say is to the point where everything is taken care of. You know, it's going to be less about, okay, now what does the future look like, and more about, okay, what's next for these storytellers as opposed to these characters.
I see. Personally, I'd like to see him do a bit of a time skip at the end of all of this, and just allow the players to maybe have some free reign. Perhaps not 2 years, as you said. 2 years is a bit of a stretch, but maybe a couple of months, and then just come back after this entire thing is taken care of and go, okay, where are your characters at now in the story, and let's pick it up. Because it really puts the onus back on the players to kind of think about, okay, how would my characters be affected now, and how would they have grown? But yeah, you're 100% correct. It's really whatever story they choose to tell, I'm on board, but it would be interesting.
Now, I do see, 2 months, maybe 3 time skips that way, where they do go off to do their own thing for that 2 months before they reconvene. In which case, I see Grog and Pike, as AKA Arashi says, Grog and Pike going to Western. Percy, Vex, and Vax all going to Whitestone.
Yes.
Percy to, help finish getting everything built up. Vax going because there's a new temple being built to the Raven Queen, so he's probably going to be there to help get that established and built up. And Vex, I'm a Persalia shipper, so of course that's where she's going.
Oh, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. But as far as Keyleth goes, I see her going to the Fire Ashari to help them rebuilding, rather than attempting anything more on her Aramente on her own.
Okay.
I don't think she has the self-confidence to face that on her own. But that's just me.
If
And
you've
of course, that
got some
might change.
ideas, leave them down in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are of where they might go, possibly after all of this craziness ends. But we will have to see.
I don't want to think about the end.
Oh.
The only good thing about the end of the current story of Critical Role is that it means that there's going to be another story to tell with new heroes. So
Very true.
we'll see how that goes.
As long as we get more top-notch storytelling, I'm on board this ride.
Absolutely. Arrow Runner gives me the thumbs up saying same, Akiva. Thank you, Arrow Runner. But that will bring us to this week's DM's Corner. There was a pretty long little thread, I guess you could say, over on Twitter, talking about Banorns, the good liches in D&D. They made an appearance in 3.5, and I forgot to look them up before the episode. I don't think they're in 5th edition, but let me take a quick look.
No, they're not currently. And this is... Kalia, we miss you. Because I'm going to be the worst person to be talking to about in relation to this, because I didn't play in 3 or 3.5. I kind of see edition 3 and 3.5 in Dungeons and Dragons, like in World of Warcraft. What was the expansion of World of Warcraft? That was like the expansion Burning Crusade.
Yeah, the Burning Crusades.
Burning Crusade, and everyone would say, oh, back in the Burning Crusade days, and, if you weren't a player in the Burning Crusade days, you really missed out on when World of Warcraft was at its peak. And I kind of feel a bit like that. Coming into Dungeons and Dragons now, end of 4th and the beginning of 5th edition, everyone's always like, back in 3rd edition days and 3.5 edition days.
Oh, you should,
but
you should
D&D
never
was
feel that way.
But I don't know much about the Baelnork Lich, I have to admit.
So,
I did do a quick reading on them, and they look interesting.
So, let me just address the whole 3rd and 3.5 edition thing. The only reason why there's such a nostalgia for it is because there's so much as far as source books and source material for it. And 5th edition hasn't been out long enough to have that. But it will get there. It will get there. Honestly, I think when it does get to that point, 5th edition will be much, much better than 3rd edition and 3.5.
Oh wow, okay.
So when it gets to that point. At this point, it's I think it's a more streamlined, faster, and better system. Just hasn't gotten the source material yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Because to me, when I think specifically of the Balnorns, I think of Forgotten Realms, which is
Absolutely.
something I'm extremely familiar with, that I've spent a lot of time with.
Yes.
And I believe they did occur in other source material for 3.5 and 3.0.
Yes. They were actually part of the basic monster packet that you could take into, whether it was Greyhawk or...
Forgotten Realms was basically presumed to be the standard.
Well, yes. It started out with Greyhawk being the standard, and then when the novels came out and really pushed it to the forefront, Forgotten Realms just exploded. And that's why the base world, if you will, for 5th edition is the Forgotten Realms, is Faerun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, I still have the theory that all 3 of the main worlds are actually different areas of the same world.
It's possible.
They're all technically Toril, just different names for the same planet. But
Oh, that's deep.
yeah, I have too much free time on my hands sometimes. But getting back to Banorns, the actual tweet was asking Chris Perkins if whites were good or evil, and it went, well, whites are technically mindless, so they're neutral. They don't have that concept of good or evil. And then another tweet followed up, well, what about Banorns? And Perkins didn't want to get into Banorns because it's a pretty in-depth topic. Banorns are good liches. They're undead, but they're not driven by evil. So the
Can I
go ahead.
can I hop in on that just to clarify that, not only are they non-evil, but the Baelnorn, they chose to become liches to protect their people.
Yes.
A lot of them were elven, like clerics. A lot of them were, paladins that chose to become a lich.
Yes. Now, the ritual for becoming a lich, whether it's an evil lich or a Baenorn, both are very similar in that they require a quote-unquote sacrifice. With liches, the evil liches, you actually carry through and you kill people to become a lich. With the Baenorn, you do things in such a way that although you do sacrifice your people, they aren't killed. They don't lose their souls. There's no actual harm that comes to them. And
So clarify that a bit more. So what? In what way?
So I think the best presentation of the ritual was actually in one of the Baldur's Gate games.
Okay. Which people keep saying I have to play. So
you do have to play. You do have to play. It's awesome. But in one of the Baldur's Gate games, there was this quest where you had to solve this mystery of how all these people died and why there is a very confused spirit that thinks it's a lich and is pissed about being a lich. So what happened was the ritual to become a Baenorn, you actually at one point kill make an actual sacrifice and kill someone. It has to be a cognizant, thinking creature, self-aware. However, at the end of the ritual, you essentially give your body over to being undead in order to resurrect the individual.
Oh, I see.
Whereas with a lich, you kill the person, you destroy their soul, and you become a lich. But I don't, with as hard as Chris Perkins was saying, no, I don't want to talk about the liches, you all are dead, or I don't want to talk about the Baenorns, you're all dead to me. Dead! Dead to me! I don't
pun
know.
intended.
Pretty much. I don't know if they're actually going to be included in 5th edition.
It doesn't sound like that's a possibility just from his response on Twitter, but that would be very sad because what little I've been able to do on reading on the Baelnorn, they sound like an amazing twist, I suppose, on the liches, and something that I would love to be able to bring into a campaign down the road. And I mean, you still can. There's nothing stopping anybody from, just because it's in a previous edition and on a 5th edition, you can bring whatever you want into your campaigns, but it would be nice for them to include this because the concept of it is very interesting to me.
It is. The problem with the Baenorns, though, once I think it was once your character got to 14th or 15th level, you could actually undertake that ritual, and it just boosted a character's power way too much and just broke the game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although Pancakes brings up a rather interesting Critical Role tie-in. Would Vax still be required to end them as per the Raven Queen's dictate?
doesn't have anything against extending
She
of
does.
life, but
She does.
it's murky. In that case, I would say yes. I would say yes. They've pretty much spat in the face of death and twisted it for their own purposes and their own power. So yes, even though they did it for what they feel is good reasons, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see. I would say yes.
That's pretty much exactly what I said in chat. They're artificially extending their life, even though it's through a divine transformation as opposed to necromancy. It's still artificial.
Yep.
And that's the Raven Queen's problem, is there's a time for death and a place for death. Cheating that is still cheating.
Yes. Absolutely, and I agree. If you have a champion of the Raven Queen and they meet a Baelnorn, then there's going to be a fight.
And it is Baelnorn. There should be an L in there.
These Baelnorn can be found in the Feywild, which is why we're discussing them at the moment. I'm assuming tying that in, but
yes, actually they
elves.
can.
They're elves.
Yeah, so
and
that
I believe they were tied specifically to the wood elves, green elves. What the heck were they in 3rd edition?
Wild elves.
Was it the wild elves? Yeah, they were
the wild
specifically tied to that particular breed of elf.
Okay.
But yes, they were originated with that particular branch of elves. The template can be applied to any.
Oh yeah,
creature,
it's a template.
Yeah. But I think that will bring us to the end of the episode. If you enjoyed the episode, click that like button and subscribe to catch us each and every week. Send any of your D&D questions to us using the hashtag DMsCorner. We check it almost daily, and there's really not much going on there. We're kind of lonely in the DM's corner.
Aww. I'm going to tweet a question at you, Akiva, after this.
Okay. But if you want to submit art, please contact us via Twitter. I'm at Akiva David, AKIVADAPHYDD.
And I'm Kitten, Kitten Smitten G on Twitter. And Kalia is our other host at Cosmic Candy on Twitter.
Indeed. We hope you enjoyed, and until next week, kick back, relax, and enjoy your games.
May all your hits be crits, and have a nat 20 day.